everyone, my name is Sarah and today I'm going to be telling you all about the books I read in July. If you're a regular viewer, you'll know that I usually read between 10 and 15 books each month. July, I read a few less. I managed to get 7, which I'm still pretty pleased with, but would have liked to have done some more. However, I do have very exciting news. The reason why I only read 7 books in July was because I wrote an entire novel in July. This is my beautiful book. It's very exciting. It's a middle grade manuscript. Haven't decided on the title yet, which is why this is hidden. But it's basically about time travelers and a really sassy vampire and this magical town, and I just had so much fun working on it. If this sounds up your alley, agents, you know where to find me. So yeah, these are 6 of the 7 books I read in July. I really enjoyed the majority of them, which is pretty good. I've just been loving all the books I'm reading this year, and I'm really happy about that. So without further ado, I'm going to tell you my thoughts on each of these books. The first book I read was of course the YA Rooms book of the month, Wicked Fox by Kat Cho. I was expecting, honestly, to really dislike this book because we've had to have read so many fantasy books as our book of the month, and yeah, I like fantasy, but I don't read a ton of them, so I was looking at this one being like, oh my god, it's just gonna be another fantasy novel that I probably rate like 3 stars as usual, but I really surprised myself with this one. This is a 5-star read for me. It's urban fantasy, which I do prefer to high fantasy, and I definitely think that made a difference. This is a book about an 18-year-old girl called Gilmour who has a secret. She is a 9-tailed fox called a Gilmour. While her mother and the rest of the Gilmours are not meant to really like humans and they feed off of their souls, she actually finds herself wanting to become friends with this boy after she saves him in the forest. And then she starts going to school with him, and I loved it so much. It was actually adorable. It really kind of has that enemies to friends to lovers kind of feel to it, which is my type of book. And it was just so easy to race through. It wasn't like a high fantasy where sometimes I have to sit it down and kind of like take a break for a while. I just wanted to keep reading this one. It was absolutely brilliant. I haven't read that many books set in Korea, especially not Seoul, so that was really great to see. I desperately want to go there now because it just seems so cool, and I loved learning a lot more about the culture and especially the idea of the Gilmour and the mythology surrounding that. Even if you're a bit hesitant to head into fantasy, I definitely recommend Wicked Fox. It was brilliant. I loved it. The next book I read was Alice Oseman's Hotstepper Volume 2, which is so adorable, I cannot even. If you know me at all, you will know that I'm absolutely obsessed with Hotstepper. I'm obsessed with Alice and everything she writes. So of course I had to get my hands on this beautiful physical copy. Isn't it gorgeous? I mean, if you haven't seen these illustrations before, what are you doing? You need to get hold of yourself. You need to log on to the free Tapas, which is where you can read this for free, or her Tumblr, or you can go out and buy the physical copy. There's so many ways to read it, and I just want to push it onto everyone I know. If you're unfamiliar with the beautiful love story that is about Nick and Charlie, they are 2 boys in high school in England, and it's about their friendship and their love and the various different dramas that happen to them along the way. I'm actually up to date on this comic because I subscribe to Alice via Patreon, which I definitely recommend if you have the means to do so. I usually receive a new page every single morning or night, depending on where in the world you are. So I'm, I think, a book ahead of this one, so I know what's gonna happen in the future, and it is so cute. I just cannot contain my feels for it. So I love it so much. So this book was kind of a reread in that way for me because I've been following along pages at a time, but it was just so great to have the bind up, and now it will be all beautiful sitting on my shelf. The next book I read in July was Impossible Music by Sean Williams. This is a new Levels YA novel which I was really excited to get my hands on because it has deaf representation, and I've only read a few other books books where we've seen that in YA. This book is about a boy called Simon who suddenly loses his hearing after having a stroke. His whole world used to be about music beforehand. He was in a band, he was obsessed with it, and now he has to kind of grapple with the fact that he can't hear anymore. At first he's kind of reluctant to get into deaf culture and learn sign language until he meets this girl called G, who kind of makes it a little bit easier for him. They strike up a friendship and Simon kind of figures out how he can still be passionate about music and enjoy music and create music, and I really like that aspect of it. At times it did kind of feel like G is just a manic pixie dream girl, you know, just like facilitating Simon's growth and having no real meaning in the story besides that, but I still really enjoyed reading about their friendship. I don't know how accurate the deaf representation was, I can't really have a say about that, but in terms of entertainment I definitely had a good time reading this book and I wanted to see what would happen in the end, so 4 stars. The next book I read in July was Graveyard Shift in Ghost Town by my favorite Love Us YA author, Michael Pryor. Okay, one of my faves. I have too many faves to count. If you don't know, Gap Year in Ghost Town is the first book in this series. This one is the second one, and it's set in Melbourne, and it's about this boy whose family hunts ghosts and this girl who he becomes friends with, and they just have like wacky ghost hunting adventures. I am absolutely obsessed with this series. It's just so funny and easy to read, and there's so many coffee references, which I love. And of course it's always lovely to read about books set in your hometown, and I could really clearly picture where they were talking about and the various streets they walk down in Melbourne, which is just amazing. Graveyard Shift in Ghost Town is about this group of friends who have to try and figure out how to stop a major ghost infestation on Melbourne. Michael actually read the first couple of chapters of this book aloud at an event a few months ago, and he's just hilarious. I cannot get sick of his writing. I definitely need to go and read more of his books that he's published because he's got like 50 things published. It's ridiculous. Good on you. So yeah, definitely if you're in the mood for something lighthearted and funny and a little bit spooky, pick up this series. The next book I read was Call It What You Want by one of my favorite contemporary writers of all time. And recently she's written fantasy in A Curse So Dark and Lonely, so pretty cool. After absolutely loving Letters to the Lost and More Than We Can Tell, I have been dying to get my hands on Call It What You Want. And look at that beautiful cover. I just love pastel pink. Call It What You Want is a book told from dual perspectives about a boy called Rob whose father has been caught embezzling half of the town, and this girl called Megan who was caught cheating on one of her tests at school. Both of those scenarios kind of mean that these two people are outcast at their school, and when they're paired together on an assignment that they have to work on, a friendship slowly starts forming between them, and they kind of let each other through the walls that they've built around themselves. The romance in Bridget's books are just so good. I honestly cannot get enough of them. Rob and Megan were to die for, honestly. This is easily one of my favorite contemporary reads of 2019 so far. It was swoony, it was heartfelt, it was raw, it was powerful, it was everything I could want in a book and more. If you haven't read any of Bridget's books yet, please go do yourself a favor, pick this one up or pick up one of her others. They're all absolutely phenomenal, and this one would be a 5-star read for me as well. The second to last book I read in July was The Million Pieces of Nina Gill. This isn't the finished cover, so it'll be looking a little bit different when you see it in stores, but I really enjoyed this book. I had no clue what this book was about when I was getting into it, but I soon discovered that it was a story about mental illness and love and family and kind of what happens when it feels like reality is crumbling around you. This was such a raw and heartbreaking read. At times I actually had to put it down because it was just so emotional. I've also heard that it's kind of based off the author's own experiences, so this is an own voices novel for mental illness representation, which is really great to see. And yeah, I can't really say too much more about this book without spoiling it, but be sure to have a box of tissues with you when you read it because you will need them. And finally, the last book I read in July was The Paper and Heart Society by Lucy Prowry. I have been so excited to read this book ever since it was announced. I've been following Lucy on social media for a while now, and I'm just so happy for her. What an incredible achievement, honestly. And when I heard that The Paper and Heart Society is a book about book clubs and loving literature and it's set in Britain, oh my god, my heart just could not handle it. This book is about a girl who moves to a new town after she was bullied, and she kind of has to find a whole new group of friends, and she discovers this book club. At first she isn't too sure if she fits in with those people as well, but soon a friendship forms between the group of them and it is adorable, but she's still keeping secrets, so drama. This book is definitely a younger YA read, so definitely recommend it to your middle grade readers and your YA readers. It was just so beautiful, so pure, and I loved it to pieces. So yeah, these are all the books I read in July. I had a really great reading month and I thoroughly enjoyed all of these novels. If you've read any of these, do let me know what you thought of them, or if they're on your TBR, I would love to know that as well. But that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it and I will see you soon. Bye everyone!